What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, and I am here with my co-host, Dave Martinson. Dave, what's going on, man?
Kiss my piss.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking a lot of stuff today. We're right in the thick of, spring, summer culture season really heating up. We're going to be talking Silicon Valley. We're going to be talking Barry, a lot of music to get to, and some news from Spotify. But first, if you're listening to this and you like the podcast, hit subscribe down here. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod and give us a follow and clicks and share us with friends. And also give us a rating and review on iTunes. We really appreciate all the feedback. Dave, speaking of piss, R. Kelly, very famous for some not so able to be consensual piss action in the past, and now he is suffering repercussions from the streaming service Spotify. Fill me in on that news.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I didn't immediately remember that R. Kelly allegation. That's because there's so many, and there's so many wide variations to the shitty things R. Kelly has almost certainly done. But yeah, Spotify announced that they were removing R. Kelly and XXXTentacion's music from their playlists, and then they quickly updated that with an announcement that they didn't want to have any hateful conduct promoted on their playlists. Of course, the music is still on Spotify. They didn't take it down or anything. They're just not actively promoting it, and it is definitely noteworthy because 20 to 30% of all Spotify streams are consumed via playlist, and that's probably upwards of like 50% of all new music is consumed via playlist. And for XXX, of course, we reviewed his album Question Mark a few weeks back. SoundCloud.com/nostalgiapod, check that out. But he came up in the SoundCloud generation, and usually when SoundCloud rappers blow up from SoundCloud, their hits go on to the Rap Caviar playlist, the most followed influential playlist on Spotify, and that really helped made his career. And then it's kind of funny because the opposite is R. Kelly. R. Kelly's not someone who does big streaming numbers. He hasn't had a hit in over 10 years. So he's not even really taking much of a hit from this. But it's interesting to see that Spotify, the biggest music streaming platform, the way most people consume music nowadays, is taking a kind of moral stand against artists, despite the fact that neither of these artists have been convicted of any wrongdoing. What do you think?
Yeah, that was what actually I was going to ask you. Doesn't this seem like a slippery slope in a way? Like today, one of your guys from Brockhampton, or over the weekend, was accused of
I'm your van.
Yeah, with sexual or having sex with a minor, being mentally and verbally abusive in his romantic relationships, and it really feels like it's nice to see a precedent like this set, because you don't want to be boosting up these people who are problematic or who have a history of this, but where is the line? And that's going to be the gray area, is when you're not pumping up certain people for something that people might say is an allegation, or something that people might say, he was convicted of this, but it's not as bad as this other person, so why are you taking this down? Now, obviously, it seems like they're focusing on some very problematic artists. XXX and R. Kelly are particularly well known for some of their serious legal issues, but I don't know. What is your feeling? Do you feel like this is a good precedent to set, or do you feel like this is going to lead to problems down the road?
Well, yeah, I mean, the two responses from the camps are kind of eye-opening. R. Kelly's camp basically just did, another denial thing, just saying that why would you react to unproven allegations, blah, 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 stuff they've basically been saying. And then X's camp basically posted a list of all these artists on Spotify that have had various things happen, like Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne, Chris Brown, 6ix9ine, Kodak Black, etc. Saying, oh, well, why are these people on? Even Michael Jackson, why are they on Spotify? Right? It's the same, no different. Right. They've been accused of stuff like me, not convicted like me. Similar situation. But so I do understand that it is clearly a slippery slope. And a lot of these artists are still pretty well regarded, like a Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre did some really shitty things.
Yep.
Most people still really like him. But because it's just the playlist, you're not taking them off the platform, because again, they're not their music. There's nothing wrong with the music, so they really have no. They wouldn't really be justified taking it off. But you're just not giving them the free promo anymore. When something bad happens to a famous person, outside of music, a lot of times they lose endorsements before they're convicted of anything. I don't think it's that different. But it is, a slippery slope. I think Spotify. They said it to take it on a case-by-case basis, but they really set up X's camp to give him that very easy retort. Well, what about these people? It's whataboutism. Welcome to 2018. So I would have liked them to maybe thought it out a little better, but I think this is a positive thing, and I'm really curious to see what happens to artists like X and TK that have big followings, but also got that following from a playlist. So. Interesting to see. Apple Music also followed suit, removing R. Kelly, and Pandora as well. So we'll see how far this can go, because some people are just be like, why are you going to punish people that haven't officially been accused of anything? But I think it's for the best.
Yeah. Kind of just to reiterate my point, I think it's definitely a good thing, but they need to come up with, I think, a more set policy, kind of like what you said, like a more thought out guideline to this, so that they have some consistency with it. It'll definitely be something to monitor, but overall, good move. We're going to be talking a lot about different artists today, and just a little preview for next week. We'll be talking XXL freshman. Why don't we start with someone who's an XXL freshman last year, T Grizzly?
No.
Oh, he wasn't last year.
No, Cardi was.
Cardi was. So it wasn't. T Grizzly was not an XXL freshman.
Correct.
I was on the cusp.
Right. Last year, you brought him up. He's one of the few you're able to suggest as a choice. And T Grizzly was, I think, rightfully not picked last year. He was a little too new. His breakout song, First Day Out, got that LeBron cosign. That dropped end of 2016, and XXL decisions get made in, April of the spring every year. So T Grizzly was really hot, but a little new. You have to, give him that extra year, make sure it's legit. And, he released From the D to A, that awesome song with Yachty. Then he had his first tape, My Moment. And then he had that collab tape, Blutas, with Lil Durk from Chicago. And then now we're here with Activated, his debut album, which releases just ahead of that next XXL cover, which is coming next month. So he's probably already shot the cover, but the album's out now. And it's a long album, but I think it kind of does a lot of what T Grizzly does well and what he kind of got famous for. I mean, what'd you think of the project?
Well, I've only listened to a couple of T Grizzly things in the past. Obviously, the song that got co-signed from LeBron was one that blew up and became very popular. I felt kind of surprised by moments on it, like Chris Brown kind of popping up on two songs. I was like, it seemed like he is trying to go in a more commercial view, which I think makes sense. He obviously wants to grow as an artist and become more well-known and more consumable. And just kind of listening to some of his past work, it seems like he really tries to keep like this earnest honesty in his lyrics and what he talks about. So I think he kind of realized he probably needed to go with something a little bit more conventional to gain some more acclaim and some more fans. I just don't know if it totally fits for his style, and I kind of was left a little underwhelmed by the album, but considering it's his first one, I think there's a lot here to work with. You seem to be high on it, though. What did you like about it?
No, I do agree with that take. You'll notice on this album that he did kind of switch some things up. He did sing some hooks, not something he's really done before. When he did Blutas with Lil Durk did any of the singing hooks that they had on that. And Grizzly, up to this point, was very much kind of like a Meek Mill, just a very aggressive rapper talking about, gangster rap type shit. And while most of the production is still, very Meek-esque, I guess you could say, like, type beats and whatnot, the fact that he already is open to doing softer stuff, I think is a good sign for where his head's at. But yeah, I mean, overall, the appeal of T Grizzly is like just how fucking autobiographical he is. He like will just paint the picture the way he has things in his mind, and it kind of became a meme over the weekend. The song "Too Lit," I think, is what spurred it, where he's just like super, super honest about the crimes he used to commit with his friends, and he'd be like, "Hey Joe, remember when we robbed so and so on that day on this time at that street corner?" Like he's just very, very specific about things. It's kind of funny.
He got that LeBron James photographic memory, dog.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. So I to your point about it being a little underwhelming, I think there's like a really good album in here, but he let it get a little too long because he tried to do a lot of other things. I think if this was cut down to like maybe 12 tracks, it could have been really impressive. But again, like you said, he's only he just turned 24. He's still really young, and I think the way he actually is a competent rapper. And he does have lyrics, so I don't think he's going to be a flash in the pan at all. And I thought "Activated," the title track, the first song on the album, was very much like "Get Up 10" by Cardi B, her intro track, which is very much like "Dreams and Nightmares," the famous aggressive intro track from Meek Mill. And then I thought "Jet Ski Grizzly," the song with Lil Pump, I thought Lil Pump actually really brought in this, and even Lil Yachty's features I really enjoyed. So I think overall it's promising.
Definitely promising
from T Grizzly.
Yeah, probably the track that stood out to me the most was "On My Own," the final track. That sounded, I think, most like his older stuff. So that's probably why I was attracted to that one. So someone that actually was an XXL freshman, not just in my heart, but actually named an XXL freshman, Playboi Carti, also dropped his debut album, which
surprise album.
Yeah, a mixtape, by self-titled mixtape last year, right? 2 years, yeah, last year. Now he gained a lot of acclaim through SoundCloud, if I'm correct. And again, kind of my take on this album was I was a little underwhelmed. I think there's a lot here, but what stood out most was this guy Pierre Bourne, his producer. He's great, man. Like,
he made Magnolia. He outmade Carti. He was like the breakout producer of 2017.
I thought his production on this was fantastic. Even from the intro track, which I actually think that one was guest produced, but I mean, like the whole just sound of it, I think was what stood out to me most. Carti's parts were kind of meh.
Right.
I mean, what was your take on this? Did you enjoy it more than I did?
Well, yeah, I think to your point, like Carti's parts are meh. Carti is not he's very much the opposite of T Grizzly.
Right.
He's not going to put together tight 16s. He's not going to tell you anything that introspective. T Grizzly is way far ahead of him in that department. But what Carti does bring is just like swagger and ad libs and just vibes. And especially when meeting with a good beat, it usually works out well. I wasn't the biggest fan of this album, which is called Die Lit, which I think is a fucking awesome album title, especially for today.
Well, with the cover art,
for sure.
The crowd looks awesome.
Yeah, but I think really the reason I didn't like it so much is like I just didn't find songs that jumped out to me the way his old songs had. Like self-titled last year obviously had Magnolia, but also had Woke Up Like This with Uzi and New Choppa with Rocky. And then before that, his like first like breakout songs, Broke Boy with his infamous music video, and Fetty. Like I like all those songs more than I like anything on this. And it's not like he's doing anything that different. I think he there's some like vocal changes. Obviously he distorted his voice in some of these songs. But it just seems like I feel like the Bryson Tiller feature was pretty underwhelming, and that's disappointing because Bryson Tiller does not do a lot of features. I thought the Travis song was pretty solid, just because the vibe, the way Travis has been going right now actually kind of really meshes well with Carti. But yeah, I mean, the vibes are there. I think my favorite songs were Shoota with Uzi. I thought that was a great Uzi feature. And Lean For Real with a way too short Skepta feature. My ears perked the fuck up when Skepta came on. Man.
For some reason, I feel like every time Skepta is on a track, he just jumps off like
Skepta.
Yeah. he's definitely wonderful. Yeah, so it seems like for both of these we're a little bit underwhelmed on T Grizzly and Playboi Carti. But before we started, you were bumping this guy, Ski Mask the Slump God. So tell me about your guy here.
Yeah, Ski Mask Slump God, Beware the Book of Eli. Like T Grizzly, I expect him to be a freshman this year. He was kind of in the mix last year, but was probably rightfully passed over to for more seasoning. And he came up with XXXTentacion as friends. They're from the same part of South Florida, and they started getting big together. And I think Ski Mask opened up for one of X's first tours. But Ski Mask, I think, is another guy that I expect to stick around a long time because he raps in a very unique way. Like Grizzly, he's also a competent rapper, but I think he's got a very unique sound because he has a lot of flows in him, and this is a short, like 20+ minute tape, a lot of short tracks. Like we mentioned when the Valet project dropped, nothing really approaching 3 minutes on this, but on all these songs, he can drop all these different flows, and he can have some songs that are just very like bits of like dark humor. And just like, it's not something you can find anywhere. He's not like your average trap rapper where you know exactly what you're going to get as soon as you start listening. I think he definitely has his lone little lane, despite, blowing up in that SoundCloud space. And I mean, you were telling me that you thought it reminded you of Flatbush Zombies. What'd you how'd you get there?
Well, I mean, just like the elements of psychedelia in the sound, but just like the darkness of the music, and it actually kind of reminded me of like Flatbush mixed with like Odd Future at times. I think also his voice kind of fits like that Odd Future vibe a lot. It's funny because you told me to listen to his hit single "Catch Me Outside" before listening to this, and that track would not have fit on this album at all, I don't think.
No.
But the way that he kind of transitioned, which he was fire on that "Catch Me Outside" song, to the songs on this, I thought was pretty impressive. To your point about him having these different types of flows within him, but so you think he has this ability to kind of stick around? This is in similar to like Valet. It's a very short album, 21 minutes, only 10 songs. Do you think that because he is so dark, he like almost needs to keep these songs short because like this isn't something I would want to listen to for like 40 minutes. I'd feel way too like sitting in the muck in a way almost.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. I didn't think of it that way, but maybe so. This is his, I think, 4th tape. One of the shorter ones, though. There was actually a longer version of the tape that leaked out. He had some management issues with this, so he like fired his management and waited a week and put out this. But he lost some features on this tape. He's supposed to have an offset feature that's gone. So I think depending on where you're listening to it, you might be listening to a slightly different project. But I'd love to ask him.
Yeah.
Is your music short because you only can write so many Hades-esque bars?
Right. Yeah. I also, just kind of thinking, XXXTentacion and then Ski Mask came up together. Who do you think is more successful in 3 years?
I mean, I feel like you have to go with X just because he is so much more famous,
right,
and so much more popular. I don't think Ski Mask will ever get that mainstream. He doesn't make that kind of music. But then again, X doesn't really make mainstream music either. And Sad got to like 5 on the chart this year, partially due to Spotify's help. But times have changed. But I think Ski Mask might have the longer tail, but he'll never approach X's peak in terms of sheer scope.
Kind of crazy because he does seem like just a better technical rapper.
For sure.
More skillful.
I mean, X doesn't rap technically as much as Ski Mask does anyway. So yeah, definitely.
Someone that doesn't rap at all, but became big off a song with a rapper, 2015's "See You Again" by Wiz Khalifa. Charlie Puth sang the hook on that song. This is his 2nd album, Voice Notes.
Correct.
I didn't write it down here. So yeah, Voice Notes, follow up to his 2016 album, 9-Track Mind. By that time, he had already had 3 top 40 singles. So this guy has some real broad pop appeal. This album was self-produced because he really hated the production on his first one, which was a mess for the most part.
The album kind of sucks.
Was that a good move though? Was this a more succinct and better album than his 2016 debut?
Yeah, short answer, yes, definitely. Also, 9-Track Mind is more than 9 tracks. Come on, dog.
It's like 13 or 14, right?
Right, and that's before the deluxe edition, which adds even more tracks. So that was annoying. But
because we definitely needed a deluxe edition of 9-Track Mind.
But yeah, I mean, he Nine Track Mind, he, like you said, he had all this buzz and momentum, right? And then you release this album, and it's not that it's like total trash the way some reviews scored it as, but it was just very simple. I think is the way to put it, like lyrically simple, thematically simple. It's just kind of him being, a lover, famous lover in LA and whatnot. Like it wasn't a lot there. Granted, I think there was some, his sensibilities in terms of the kind of pop music he likes to make. There were some positive things there. But then here we go to voice notes, and I mean, producing it all. I think he's actually a very talented producer and has a good ear for that. So it's nice to see that, because a lot of pop singers, male or female, most of them do not make beats. Right. So it's kind of refreshing in that regard. And yeah, I thought voice notes was much better for sure. And there's actually some songs I plan to go back to. I mean, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, I think himself producing, he definitely had a vision for this and an idea of what he wanted it to sound like, which comes across. I think it's almost too similar at times. Like some of the tracks didn't really stick out to me in any way. Also, some of the features he had on this were kind of puzzling, like we were talking before. But James Taylor, like out of nowhere on Changes, which is obviously like an ode to, what was it? Man in the Mirror or something like that. There's like a song that's like supposed to be very similar lyrical message though. Yeah. Again, kind of simple. Yeah. I don't know. It's I don't really find him to be a very intriguing artist. I kind of just see him as like a male lyricist who will probably pop up and do some features, almost kind of like the main guy from One Republic. I can't even remember his name.
Ryan Tedder.
Yeah, Ryan Tedder. He ended up doing like just some hooks and stuff, and One Republic has, I mean, they can still make a hit, kind of like Maroon 5, but they kind of fade away and
yeah, that's actually a really good call. I think is the best thing about Charlie Puth is his songwriting.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot in him. Like he's a very talented dude, obviously.
Yeah,
but the act of Charlie Puth, the singer, the pop star, is probably not the best. So far, is not the best. Use of that talent. I do think he's more interesting than, say, like a Nick Jonas or some other like second tier male pop star. Obviously he doesn't have like an amazing voice. He's not like Sam Smith, but I thought I liked voice notes more than I liked Justin Timberlake's Man in the Woods. I liked LA Girls and How Long a lot. I think Done For Me with Kehlani is awesome. And I really like Slow It Down as well. And then heck, I mean, he shot a shot and got a Boys to Men feature. Like that gets brownie points in my book.
Yeah, in 2018, Boys to Men, dog. Yeah, it's. I think he'll definitely be a lasting pop person in pop music, but I just don't think he'll ever reach those like upper echelons. But could be wrong. A guy we didn't review, Shawn Mendes, I kind of felt the same way about, but he seems to be just gaining more and more steam every year. So. He could be somebody that we're talking about for years to come, especially, he's co-written a lot of stuff like Maroon 5, Jason Derulo, like you said, he's talented. We'll see. Yeah, but this was definitely none of these were my favorite album of the weekend, Dave. And why was that?
That was probably because you were eagerly awaiting the 6th Arctic Monkeys album, the first one in 5 years, Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. That's the name, right?
Yeah, I was so eager about it, I forgot to mention it last week.
Yeah. I mean, shit, I went like 30 seconds on Charlie Puth, and we didn't even mention that Arctic Monkeys was coming out. But yeah, English rock band, probably the most successful band of the 2000s, like the early aughts. They formed in 2002 in England, but their first album dropped in 2006. So that's kind of when I think of them as, coming to be. Yeah. And they're really an alternative rock band, obviously, but they, it's funny, Wikipedia calls them indie rock. They're not indie rock. That's stupid.
No, they're not.
And Alex Turner, their front man, also did Last Shadow Puppets. I remember you brought up that second Last Shadow Puppets record from 2016 when it came out. But now they're back, following up AM, their mega hit album from 2013. Yeah. And it's different from their sound for sure. Perhaps it's more indie rock than any of their other music. I mean, what did you think as a big Arctic Monkeys fan? You've seen them before, right?
Yeah, I saw them live at Firefly 2015. Before they playing 2 sets before the Foo Fighters. My favorite memory from that is I was in the crowd, and Alex Turner, of course, they're for AM, they had this like greaser look to them almost, where they had like button ups with short sleeves and rolled up sleeves and like slicked back hair. And Alex Turner's like sauntering around the stage, like crooning. And this girl in front of me and my girlfriend just is like, I'm feeling a lot of things down there. So like Alex Turner has like, he has like this sort of appeal to people. Like people can consider him like our generation's Bowie in a lot of ways, which is like a huge comparison to make. This is probably, the most divisive album Arctic Monkeys has ever made, which is interesting because 2006 is Whatever People Think I Am, that's what I'm not, was so punk sounding and like had this like cutting lyricism to it, and that was kind of what epitomized Arctic Monkeys. And throughout all their albums, like My Favorite Nightmare, Humbug, Suckin' in C, they experimented with a little bit more like classical sounding rock. But this totally went in a different direction. It's based off this idea that Turner came up with reading a couple of books. I don't recall which ones they were, but basically about this like hotel on the moon. And there's these like lounge singers, this lounge band that is like playing to these people who moved to the moon. And he really had like a very distinct vibe and idea and theme for this, which is why I'm pretty much calling it a concept album for Arctic Monkeys, which is I don't know if it's a lot of people would consider it that, but they really were going for something very distinct and different for them, which I didn't like at first because I'm going into this thinking I'm going to hear something like AM or these really catchy hooks, almost like this like bluesy rock sound. And I get this like lounge jazz record with like, it sounded like a mix of the Last Shadow Puppets and Arctic Monkeys to some extent. But it's really grown on me listening to it a couple times, because I think not only does Turner really like step his lyricism game up on this, and there's a lot of like really weird lyrics that you have to really sit with and digest, but I also think for a band like Arctic Monkeys, and we give a lot of bands shit about not doing something new, not trying enough things and landing it.
Definitely.
They took a huge left turn and they still kind of landed it. And it actually makes me excited for the next Arctic Monkeys album, because I feel like adding something like this to their repertoire, they can now experiment with a lot of different sounds and kind of mesh everything together to make a very unique sounding and stylistic album that not a lot of bands are doing now. And it's all because Alex Turner really is able to write sounds and build off a concept that not a lot of people do. Now, I don't think this is a perfect album. It's probably my second to least favorite Arctic Monkeys album, but there's a lot here to like. Did you give it a listen?
I did. I'm not that familiar with their music beyond like the bigger AM songs, so it was definitely a much like Jack White's Boarding House Reach. It was kind of came out of left field for me.
Did anything pop out to you about the record?
I think I don't have any one song or anything, but I mean, to your point about being a concept album, I think what popped out was just how crafted the sound so obviously was,
Yeah, it kind of like in the same vein of like a lounge singer. Like it all kind of stays like the same level. There's not a ton of highs or a ton of lows to it, but if you listen with like really good headphones, like Nick O'Malley's bass on this is like unbelievable, especially in the first half of the album. Like on songs like Star Treatment. Also like 4 out of 5, which they dropped as a single this past weekend with a music video. If you listen to the end of it, like it builds up, and this instrumental at the end is like classic Arctic Monkeys in a way where like you can hear them just like starting to like let go and just like lose himself in the music, which is really exciting, because I was kind of nervous about the tickets I bought to see them in July. I was like, this is gonna be like an hour of like outer space like jazz rock. I'm not sure if I can stomach that, but there's a lot here to really like. A couple of the songs that stood out to me, Golden Trunks was a really good one, probably his most like biting political song Turner's ever written. And then Ultra Cheese, the final track, also I thought was really well done. But again, this is an album that I think you have to take as a whole, and that's why I think it's good that they didn't release singles leading up to this, because if they had, I don't know if people would have given it the chance that You kind of have to for an album like this. But yeah, Arctic Monkeys, something new. Not what we expected.
How would you compare it to the new albums from three kind of contemporaries of them that dropped last year? The Foo Fighters, The Killers, and Arcade Fire. All different kinds of bands, obviously, but they all were about the same, size and structure, more or less, and they all released new albums last summer.
Yeah, so if I remember the Foo Fighters album, Concrete and Gold, they definitely took some chances, did some different stuff on that, but it was pretty much a same old Foo Fighter type album. Same with the Killers, although the Killers continue to kind of go in a more obscure and more like 80s synth pop type direction. Yeah. Actually, it's interesting because I think Kings of Leon's album last year is probably the one that we didn't even review it. I think that's the one that was best out of those other three. I think Arctic Monkeys is a little bit better, but the sound that they try with that really incorporated some of their more poppy elements with some of their roots as like a blues, grassy, like hard, like rock band. So I think that probably Kings of Leon and Arctic Monkeys, which I never really thought I'd put those two together, are probably the ones that show the most promise out of all.
Interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these play out in a live show, because they have so many different sounds now that it's going to be either a lot of like ups and downs, or if they like kind of change these songs up to like fit more of their like punk rock energy. It's definitely going to be interesting to see. Are you going to catch them at all this summer?
No, they're not at Governor's Ball.
That's right. You're only going to Governor's. Governor's Ball is only a couple weeks. You excited?
Yeah, that's on June 2nd, Saturday, June 2nd. So coming up.
I might grab that Friday ticket. See Jack White.
Nice.
We'll see.
Shawn Mendes, special guest set they added to Friday. Go to that.
Maybe I'll check him out and give a review. So something that we haven't really talked much about, but we did a review on last year, Silicon Valley. So HBO kind of finished up its springtime shows last night. Silicon Valley, Barry wrapped up. Atlanta also wrapped up, but we talked about Atlanta a lot. So why don't we put that on the shelf? Last year, when Silicon Valley season 4 wrapped up, I think what we said was the show seems to be kind of dropping off. I think with the news that came out about TJ Miller, verified or kind of gave validity to what we were seeing, in that it seems like there was a lot of disjointment and just like lack of interest from a lot of the people. But we were optimistic about this season because we thought Erlich Bachman gone can give Jimmy O Yang's Jin Yang a lot of room to shine. Maybe Monica folds into the mix. What did you think? I mean, was this a good season of Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't spin. Season 4 was a lot of wheels spinning, and that's not to say that any season didn't spin wheels to a certain extent. Once you look back on Silicon Valley, it's been renewed for season 6, so we got 5 in the can already. This was only 8 episodes, not 10 this time, but I think this is definitely an improvement on season 4, and I think some of the best, like what the show can still do the best. There's still moments of that, but I do think that some people are getting a little restless with the plot. And like, you mentioned Jimmy O Yang and Monica. I mean, Jin Yang starts off really strong in this, and then he goes to China for most of the season, and he's not there. Now he's moved back and he's in Erlich's room. I hope they'll really commit to him being a part of the ensemble. And then the show has always struggled with its female characters, and Monica, again, barely in the season, and then she comes in really hot at the end. Just seemed like a weird choice. And then Lori Breen, I mean, I think making her an antagonist was effective and probably smart. Definitely. But her character has always been just a caricature, so they still kind of lack in that department. But speaking of what did well, I thought Zach Woods continued his run as the MVP of the show. God, is he hilarious. And then I think Martin Starr deserves some credit for the kind of tweaks he did with Guilfoyle. There are multiple moments where they basically just say, yeah, no. He's like, yeah, no, I am racist. You're right. But overall, I thought his comedy was good. And, Dinesh, I feel like got a lot of shine earlier in the show's run, but they've kind of spread it around among that core group. And while I think most people don't really like Richard, I think Thomas Miltich is still really good playing that character. So I think there's still a lot to like in with the show, even if the plot can kind of be frustrating.
Yeah, I think the thing I feel most frustrated with is it seems like this season they were kind of trying to find like the starting lineup they should be putting out there. In a way, it's like they had like 3 or 4 of the players, but they couldn't find like the fifth one that they really could build an episode around or build, like a story arc around. Because, like you said, Jimmy O Yang's Jin Yang at the beginning of the season got a lot of shine, and I was like, okay, here we go. Like we're gonna have to invest in him. Then he gets put on the bench. Lori Breen, they kind of humanized with that episode where her and Thomas Middleditch are kind of like talking about how hard it is to be a CEO and be wearing all this, and then she goes back to being this like ruthless, cutthroat, straight-faced CEO who's just trying to do whatever she needs to do to be successful. And Monica, I mean, like you said, just comes on really strong at the end, and they actually kind of humanize her in a way. But you see it for 2 episodes, and then who knows what her role will be next season. So I feel like this was a lot of like figuring things out post Ehrlich, which I guess probably should have been expected. And the show is still good, but I just don't think it's must watch the way it used to be.
Right. Yeah, I think they kind of figured out how to use Gavin again as like he's the B plot more or less, and then he'll rope back into the main plot at times. I think it's pretty effective, and still pretty funny. Like the supporting characters around him, I think, worked really well. But I mean, some stuff I think took a little too long this year. Like all the stuff about them like staffing up and getting those like other like little startups to join with them. Only for them to leave at the end. Like it kind of brings up the criticism of, oh yeah, no matter how much progress they make in Silicon Valley, Pied Piper will always just reset to zero. Now this time things seem to be on the up and up, so we know probably in episode 2 or 3 it's like it never happened, just by assumption. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's not the top tier comedy like a Barry or like Atlanta shows that just aspire to be bigger. And it's not quite as good as Veep, but still pretty good. I mean, I still like the show more than the NBC offerings. I know you're a big Good Place fan, but yeah, I think it's still good. But I'm hoping that Mike Judge and the team kind of, like you said, figured out the lineup again with TJ Miller out of the way. And considering the upheaval with that, I think the season went pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah, definitely. Do you like it more than Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is now an NBC property?
Yeah, I mean, I've watched some Brooklyn Nine-Nine here and there. A lot of good people on that show. Yeah. I like Sandberg, I like Terry Crews, I like Joe Truglio. And that's a show that actually has had good character growth from what I've read, and also can like play with stereotypes and just liberal ideas like that. Silicon Valley this season kind of tipped its toes into that with Jimmy Yang's character specifically, and like you said, Guilfoyle and his racism. But I think it's not quite as progressive as something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But I think it's good that it's back at NBC, just because it's a show produced by Universal anyway, so it should be at NBC. But I mean, if you think of all like the great comedies this since 2000, I mean, The Office, Parks and Rec, and 30 Rock were on NBC. And who canceled Arrested Development? Fox. Just like they canceled Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So it just kind of makes sense. If you're a comedy, you want to be an NBC or HBO. Those are the 2 spots right now.
Definitely. But I think my only last thought on Silicon Valley is probably the funniest bit that they had all season, at least for me, was in the last episode, the way Jared just destroyed Richard's helper or assistant. Like just the way he like mentally beat him down. Like the character that guy became was hilarious.
Yeah, for sure.
Alec Berg is what the producer or executive producer of Silicon Valley. Now, he's also the producer of Barry, which had its first season wrap up last night. And we kind of talked about Barry after the first episode and said it's excellent. That we really enjoyed it. I'm wondering if you felt like it kind of carried it throughout the season, because we kind of talked about this is a hard needle to thread. Hitmen turning into an actor, supposed to be a comedy. It's kind of a difficult plane to land, and did it land?
I think it definitely landed. And when we talked about the premiere, what would we say? Like, oh, it's he's good at being a hitman, but he wants to be an actor, and he's bad at being an actor, right? That's already a great premise with all the talent involved, right? So we're like, all right, cool, we're in. and it's effective and it's well written. What I did not expect was that the show is going to be like more about like morality and slowly convince the viewer over the course of 8 episodes that the main protagonist that you're supposed to like, in this case Bill Hader's Barry, perhaps really isn't a good person. He starts off just convincing himself that he's doing bad things, obviously killing people, but he's killing bad people so he can rationalize it and, you know, internalize it, and so he can be okay with it. And then the last 2 episodes, I think, are just this amazing 1-2 punch. And, you know, it fucks the penultimate episode really fucks Barry up because he killed an innocent person. And then the finale,
friend.
Right? And then the finale ends with him killing another innocent person. And I thought the finale was very effective because it had that fake out where, like, oh, it seems like we've had a happy resolution. Oh wait, there's 12 minutes left. I have to be on my toes again.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the writing and just the creativity with this show, because throughout the season they use those flash forwards or those daydreams that, you know, you don't know if they're flash forwards, but those daydreams as like a way for Barry to escape and to kind of show like what he's really striving for and what he's looking for in life. And then when, you know, they flash forward to that scene at Gene's cabin on the lake, you're like, oh, this has to be like just a flash forward in Barry's mind. And then when it turns out not to be, and the way that actually turns into something that makes him kind of face who he is as a person, which, you know, if you want to read more about like that concept and the performances that they're doing, not only like on stage, but in their real lives on this show, Miles Surrey's article on The Ringer, I really recommend it. Yeah, it's just really great filmmaking to kind of juxtapose those two things together and kind of smash them together to make you face like, what's this person all about that you're rooting for. Hader is just unbelievable in this show. Like, not only in the penultimate episode, that scene where he's talking with Chris, his friend, and he realizes he has to kill him, like the way that he plays that with like why'd you have to say that? And then like freaking out. But then everything after that, and then also his face when Gene kind of gives him up in the last episode. Like just the look in his eyes, like so perfect. I could see him getting a nomination for this for sure.
Oh, I think he'd definitely get a nomination. Just, I mean, on the surface, Veep is not going to be nominated this year. Final season isn't coming out till next year, so I think he's actually got a great opportunity to at least be nominated. Perhaps he'll lose to the Atlanta guys, one of them, but yeah, I definitely think it's really well deserved. What did you think of Sarah Goldberg's character, Sally, throughout the season? I saw some criticism saying that people thought her character was just too selfish and she didn't have like enough of an arc. And I don't know if that makes sense to me, just because her character is a struggling actress that's inherently going to be a selfish character. I mean, did you get that vibe?
I feel like a lot of people on this show are selfish. Like, I feel like most of the people that you're rooting for are selfish in a lot of ways. You know, you think about like Fuchs. He was incredibly selfish, like basically manipulating Barry to do what he wants him to do, not really thinking about how it affects him. Perhaps the only like non-selfish person was one of my favorites, NoHo Hank. That dude was hilarious. Shout out Anthony Kerrigan. Sarah Goldberg, I thought it was a great performance. I didn't really like her character, but I think, you know, I'm probably not supposed to really like her character. I did feel for her in the episode when like her agent propositions her, and just like I thought that the way that she played that was excellent. But yeah, she's a very shallow person whose biggest fear is not becoming a star. It's not, you know, not making it as an actor, not being a good actor. It's not being a star. And it's kind of hard for me to I don't know, feel for somebody like that. What was your feeling on it?
I think that's fair. I mean, I think by the end of the season, the most likable people are who? The like NoHo Hank, a Chechen gangster. Like, I guess Gene. I got Gene's more or less like a good innocent guy. Didn't really do much wrong. You know, I guess Gene's the best character in that regard. But interesting way to think about who's the most likable on the show, because it's definitely, as it progresses, you realize, oh, these people aren't that great.
I can't forget what nationality the other gangster was, but the guy that was supposedly like really like cutthroat, bad.
Bolivian.
Yeah, the Bolivian. And then he's like the nicest guy ever. He's like, oh, why didn't you just tell me? We could have talked this out, but now we can't. Now you know how this has to go down. I was like, yeah.
And they were making jokes about the Bolivians being short. And then you look it up, they actually have the shortest average height of any country in the world. It's like 5 feet.
That's, but it kind of just shows like this show is just very smart. One thing I wanted to ask you. So Alan Sepinwall in his review talked about how this finale and kind of the way that like the running theme throughout the last episode was, I'm going to be different starting now, was like how it kind of kept going. Alan Sepinwall said this almost felt like a serious finale, like the way it kind of ended. Mm-hmm. And he's a little bit concerned about where the show goes from here. Alec Berg, we mentioned, is an EP for Silicon Valley. And that's one of the big critiques of Silicon Valley is that the story arc always seems to be the same. It starts off, they have a great idea, something inevitably goes wrong, and then they fix it at the very last second. Same thing happened last night. Where do you think a show like Barry goes from here?
Yeah, that's an interesting question too, because I mean he dumped Fuchs at the airport, right. But you have to imagine Stephen Root will be back for season 2. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen? Is he just gonna like relapse and start being a hitman again? Are they gonna like reset the show in that regard? I mean, and then killing the cop, I forgot her name.
Janice.
Yeah,
Janice.
I mean, that takes away a big aspect of Gene's character. Mm-hmm. And that was also the whole, legal angle to the show. So and they also, they killed Goron. That's fine. They have the Bolivian guy and Noho Hang. That's fine. But like, it just seemed like it would be a big reset to start up a whole new season. Mm-hmm. Would they keep the acting class aspect of the show, which was a big part of it? Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. Especially with, they're out in a cabin on the lake where it doesn't seem like there's a lot of other people around. When Janice inevitably ends up dead, there's obviously going to be some suspicion around, the people who were there and what was going on. They're probably going to be pointing fingers at each other. I think more than anything, I just hope that it doesn't become this whole thing about Barry constantly trying to be someone different and then being pulled back to this life, because I could see that very quickly becoming just frustrating to watch. Maybe one season being dedicated to it, I understand, but and that's kind of the overall thing of the show is he's this one person or has been this one way and he wants to be different or hopes to be different.
Right.
But I think more than anything, the show, the heart of it is kind of coming to reality with who you are and accepting that and making sense of it. And I'm sure Hader and Bergen, unless Hiro Murai to do some more directing and maybe consulting on the show, will come up with a great direction for it. All brilliant people, but definitely some things to maybe be concerned about or thinking about moving forward. I also hope that this isn't a show that goes on for like multiple seasons. I think this is probably like a 3, maybe 4 season show.
Yeah, definitely.
Any last thoughts on anything we talked about today?
Check out that ski mask and that T Grizzly, because like you said before, we'll be talking XXL Freshman next week, and I expect those two to be there. So it's time to get familiar.
Yeah, and if you listen to the Arctic Monkeys album, tweet at us at Nowstalgia Pod. Let us know, is this a good move for Arctic Monkeys, bad move? Do you like the album? Do you not like the album? So hit us up. We want to interact with you. Again, subscribe, YouTube, SoundCloud, Nowstalgia Pod on iTunes, everywhere. Share us with friends. We really need the support. Shout out to our 2 new subscribers on YouTube. We appreciate you guys.
Hey.
What do we got next week, Dave?
Deadpool 2 comes out Thursday night. Kyle's debut album, Light of Mine, Friday. And we'll also get to the Beach House album 7, their 7th album, which we didn't have time to fit in this week. And Fahrenheit 451 with Michael Shannon, Michael B. Jordan, and Sophia Botella. That film will be on HBO Saturday, of all days. Saturday.
So we got a lot of stuff to be talking about next week. And then I think we're going to kind of be switching it up for a couple of future pods. But we will be bringing you that content weekly. Don't you worry about a thing. But until next week and until we see Deadpool, peace out.